I'm pleased to invite in our studio today Mr. Dhritabrata Bhattacharjya Tato, a Delhi-based writer and curator. Tato holds a master's degree in French literature from Calcutta University, India, and MPhil in cultural studies from Université de Paris Sorbonne Nouvelle. Tato has diverse cultural and literary tastes across a very vast canvas. He's authored several books and curated many international exhibitions across the world on Indian contemporary art. Tato, I must acknowledge the special effort that you've made to join us here. Tato has written many articles on the theme of Sufism. His book, Sufism, Its Spirit and Essence, talks about the state of Sufis in the world. Welcome once again, Tato, to Awaz-The Voice studio. We're very privileged indeed to have an author of your eminence join us. I'd begin by asking you about the contemporary relevance of Sufism.
Thank you, Tripti, and this pleasure is mutual. I'm also very happy to talk about a topic which is so close to my heart. And yes, why Sufism in the year 2023 when it has been more than 15 centuries that more or less we have the Sufi historicity through Arab literature, Persian literature, Urdu literature. Then why talking about Sufism in our present era? One thing I must tell you right in the beginning that you have seen perhaps we as human civilization, we are producing millions of different weapons to kill each other. So I feel personally that Sufism being being something which talks about peace, harmony, love, we need to talk about Sufism as much as possible. I'll tell you, historically Sufism came about, there are different opinions about it. Some people feel that it comes from Tasawwuf, which is a form of looking at Sufism. There are other people who think it comes from Sophia in Greek, and there are some people who say that Suf means wool, and when Iran got invaded by the Arabs, the people who were into the profession of liberal arts, they migrated to Kashmir, and in Kashmir they were wearing woolen garbs, woolen coats. And after 20-30 years, when Iran things kind of cooled down, they went back and people started referring to them as Sufi. So there are multiple ways. So the thing is, there is a concept of multiplicity which is right at the origin of Sufism. I would give you another small definition that William Chittick, the great professor of Sufism at the Oxford University, used to say, and he has also written about it, that Sufism used to be reality without a name, and now it's a name without a reality. That's what William Chittick says. So Sufism, if you see from Maghreb is like Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya. From Maghreb to Mashriq means, Maghreb means west, Mashriq means east.
Right.
So there was a time when Islam was expanding. Morocco was the easternmost point of Darul Islam, means the abode of Islam, and New Delhi used to be the easternmost post of Darul Islam. So the entire region between these two cities, or two countries, and one country and one city, whatever lies there, there is an overtone of Sufism, and you will find it primarily from Iran. And let's not forget that Iran used to be Buddhist at some point of time. Persian language, even today, when you say Buddh Parasti, for example, Buddh comes from Gautam Buddha.
Right.
So the thing is, you will find out that Sufism is a syncretic culture across nations, across other places, and which kind of gives value to the local traditions which are also pre-Islamic. So I would say that Sufism is definitely one of the most liberal philosophy that is not only required by India or some other countries, but globally we need to have Sufism as a central theme to talk about peace, love, and like similar things. And in our contemporary period, when we are talking of we have at least 500 different kinds of guns available in the arms market. So if the human civilization can reproduce the weapons to kill other human being in so many variety, then I feel that everybody should write a book on Sufism, peace and love and harmony. And that is the contemporaneity, that is the relevance.
So I think what I understand of Sufism is that its merit lies in its deeply unifying value, right? It has an eternal value of unifying people, like you talked of syncretism.
See, let's take the example of the patron Sufi saint of Delhi, Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, popularly known as like Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. So, yes, if you look at the composition of Amir Khusro, who was his a fellow citizen and also a very good friend of Sheikh Nizamuddin, he has written so many things about our syncretic culture. See, what we have to understand today is like we as a civilization, human civilization, our technological progress is completely out of our control. Our mobility has increased. We have destroyed more than half of biodiversity, like the volume of biodiversity. And we are actually facing a challenge as a civilization. It is very surprising to know that the world was never rich like this ever before. In the sense that if you go by global GDP today, it might be the highest peak of human civilization. But at the same time, you have people without food, you have people fighting for different kinds of causes, like
many contradictions.
Yeah, and I feel that Sufism has that power of love, and that power of love is such that it can put people on because at the end of the day, what we need is a syncretic or a sanskar, or social values that should make us less violent. And Sufi saints were always at the receiving end of violence.
Right.
Like, let's take the example of, Hazrat Sarmad,
right,
whose dargah is right in front of Jama Masjid. So he was of Jewish descent. He was born in Iraq. He came to India, and he became a very good friend of Dara Shikoh. And then you see Dara Shikoh comes up with this beautiful book called Muzammil-e-Bahrain, means the mingling of two oceans. And there he talks about Hindu-Muslim syncretic ideas, where he is talking about Noor as light, like it's a Urdu or Persian word, Noor, and he's talking about Jyotirlinga, like Hindu concept.
Right.
So somewhere he also tried to talk about the similarities. In this context, I will just take one more minute to tell you one thing, that Tagore, in one of his essays, he said that there will be differences between two human beings. Even if they're twin brothers, there will be two different human beings. And the function of education and spirituality is not to talk about the differences, to talk about the similarities, so that we can coexist.
Tato, in the age of oft-used rhetoric, clash of civilizations, how do you place Sufism in the global context?
There is only one country which preaches Sufism as its official language.
Oh, really?
And that is Morocco, the Kingdom of Morocco. They have taken Sufism as their main, like for example, you have Islamic countries, you have Christian countries, so they are a Sufi country. Of course, they are Islamic, but Sufi country. If you look at Iranian history, you will find there were some Sufi sects, they were also engaged in political activities. In this context, I just remembered that when Ghiyasuddin Balban used to be the Sultan of Delhi, his elder son was actually advised by a Sufi saint not to mix up politics and religion. And he did not pay any attention to him, and that prince got killed eventually. This is something why I'm talking about it. It's like because politics is something in present day. It's a very different concept than those days. Because if politics tries to be the messenger of spirituality, then there will be a problem. And I'm telling you one particular sentence by Ziauddin Barni, historian of Alauddin Khalji's time. He said that a saint is not suitable for the throne, and a king is not suitable for a hospice, for example, like for a seminary. So we have to understand that in a structured society, spirituality is something which actually pervades the entire society, and Sufism particularly has played a pivotal role in bringing communities together. Like you go to Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah Sharif, you will find people from different faiths, and you will find rituals which are not the official rituals of any of the prominent religions. And I would say, love is the central theme of Sufism. And when you look at Qawwali, you look at other Sufi songs, like there are many forms across the globe, and there is like Sufi dance in Turkey. You will see that every time we try to portray, like we as in the people who are writing on Sufism, we talk about this love. It's like Romeo Juliet, it's like Hir Ranja, it's like talking about the love which is impossible. And to suffer in, to suffer in that love is being a Sufi to some extent. So of course, love is the need of our civilization now, and more particularly, love towards non-human beings, in the sense animals, trees. You will find Sufi stories where a candle, a bird, or a lion, they play with us in a complete different way. And I think slowly, by making our civilization more technology oriented, we are losing the nuances of love somewhere. And Sufism can restore it, I strongly believe.
Tato, as somebody who has known you closely from, we were colleagues in the French embassy, and I always felt you were living and breathing French. It really came as a surprise to me when you invited me for the launch of your book on Sufism. So what inspired you to write a book on Sufism? I always knew that you had very rich literary taste, but tell us a little about your, what appealed you about Sufism so much as to write a book on the subject?
See, I would say that there is Qawwali. Qawwali originates from this word called qal. Qal means to scream. What really, if you talk about my personal journey, I would say that, when I first came to Delhi, I saw this huge hoarding on Mathura Road written Hazrat Nizamuddin Station. I did not know, I was very small at that time, I did not know the meaning of Hazrat. So I kept on wondering that why have they named a railway station after a man's name and not the place? Thus began a journey, and then I found out that in the vicinity of this railway station there is this Sheikh Nizamuddin Dargah Sharif. And then when I went there, I found, it was in the month of February, they are celebrating Basant Panchami. Basant Panchami, which is a primarily Indian festival.
Right.
And to celebrate Basant Panchami in a complete different, social structure, setting, I kept on wondering that why these people are celebrating Basant Panchami and who is this Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. And then slowly I found out that there was a time, like Ibn Battuta is like just after 10 years after Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia's disappearance, Ibn Battuta also comes to Delhi. So you find out that it is a complete different mobility route they had established, in which there was very rich culture, literature, poetry and spiritual concepts. And that is something which I found very interesting, and then I took it forward. I went to Maghreb. Maghreb means Northern Africa, only to find out that how their Sufism is different from ours.
Wow.
And as you know that I was born in Calcutta,
Right.
So there is also a different Sufi. I won't call it exactly Sufi because Sufi has certain features which Bauls won't have, but it is the similar vein.
Right.
And then you suddenly realize that even if human history always tries to divide people between countries, cities, linguistic groups, gender, like it goes on and on, there has been also an underlying network of love that had also covered the world at the same time. And it's the right time to talk about that more than our differences.
Which was generated by Sufism.
In India, Sufis played a pivotal role in that. You will find some of the rituals that are maintained in Dargah Sharifs are very akin to my culture. Being a Hindu, it's very akin to my culture, and we don't feel completely out of place.
You don't feel alienated?
No.
Okay. What is the message of Sufism for the younger generation today?
See, I would say that Sufism, Zehale miskin makun tagaful duraye naina banaye batiya. This is a poem of Amir Khosrow, which is sung by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Everybody, Abida Parveen, you take any prominent Sufi singers from India or abroad, Faiz Ali Faiz, the singer, and in which there are these two lines which I find the most beautiful lines of this particular Qawwali. Sakhi piya ko jo main na dekhun to kaise kaatun andheri ratiyan. How am I going to survive the darkness of the night if I don't meet my lovers or the beloveds? This is something which is universal not only among the human beings, also among the animals. So I would say that for young generation, I would personally say that they should read all the Sufi poets like Amir Khosrow, then Sadi, Hafiz, and take the challenge that the society, puts forward to young lovers. They should be able to sort out many things through their poems. It's a very simplistic way of saying that, but I would say this is one of the functions.
Tato, apart from Sufism, you also authored a book on the life of Srila Prabhupada. I have it here with me. And how does Sufism resonate in this book?
See, I would just say one thing. I remember this thing being said by somebody, either it was in a very small time temple or some Dargah Sharif I visited in Gujarat. And he said that a pious person from any religion has the same quality. They cannot harm others. So, what I am trying to say is, like all religions, all belief systems, somewhere they tend to talk about a universal human outlook. And that is exactly you find in Sufi poem. If you read the poems of Maulana Rumi, who was born in Afghanistan and who kind of lived in Turkey later on, if you read Hafiz, if you read, like I'm just giving you the big names because if people want to find out books, they will be able to find out I'm not talking about very obscure poets. There are also many of them. Amir Khusro, and there is this book called In the Bazaar of Love, which I find fascinating. It's a translation into English. So I would say that, they also have a universal human outlook. So has Vaishnavism. Actually, Sufi and Bhakti in India, they kind of existed around the same time.
Right.
And you will hear it's the same music that is coming out of both of them. And as for Vaishnavism, I would say that this Srila Prabhupada was Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami's Prabhupada. He was, he left this world in the year 1937, and I would say that he talks about...
And he is the guru of the founder of the...
Yeah, he had many disciples. One of his disciples was Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, who established ISKCON, who is also known as Srila Prabhupada. So he says, any person from Hindu, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, or even people outside the system of Varnashram can become Vaishnava. This statement is true. Asia, Europe, America, or Africa, or the entire world across the universe, any living entity that has self-realization can be termed as Vaishnava. Now you see this in this particular definition of Vaishnava that we got from, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, we see that any religion actually responds to the human sensibility. Be it Bhakti movement, be it Sufi saints, be it some other person from other culture, whoever is trying to talk about basic humanity, the message is always the same.
Lastly, would you call yourself a Sufi? I mean, are you propagating Sufism in some way in your day-to-day life?
See, firstly, I would say that you cannot call people Sufi. It will be a little bit, it's like, like the way Einstein himself, he said that I don't know anything, because he knew a lot. If you compare, I think it is a little bit fancy now to talk about Sufism a bit more. With due respect to everybody, I don't want to hurt anybody. No, I will not call myself Sufi. I would rather say that I am a researcher who is trying to look for human values in unformatted subjects and disciplines. I'll just explain. When you talk of philosophy in a book, or when you talk of any subject, we have this Cartesian logic by which you exclude the unfounded things. I would say that, religion, belief systems, and things like Sufism, they are the last repository of unformatted human knowledge. Meaning, we have formatted our knowledge in such a way that if you don't have a consumer-oriented value, we have discarded that knowledge. We thought that we don't need it. So in Sufism particularly, you have in Sufism, in Vaishnavism, in Sikhism, you have many unformatted values of human society of the yesteryears. And I am trying to bring out some of those human values and try to see whether they're still valid in our society.
Thank you so much, Tato. It was really very, very enlightening talking to you, and for giving us an idea of the relevance of Sufism. Thank you very much once again.